The search for more victims in this construction disaster.
Oh my God.
The building crumbling into a pile of debris near the French Quarter. Construction workers inside running for their lives. People on the ground barely escaping injury.
Get to the back. Get to the back.
The concerns this morning, the whole building could come down.
Caught on camera, police shooting.
Put your hands up, show me your hands.
Body camera video showing the moment an officer fatally shoots a woman inside her own home.
She was massacred in her house.
The neighbors regret about calling the cops.
Pitcher's death, the new revelations about Tyler Skaggs, an ESPN report saying an Angels employee told investigators he provided Skaggs with oxycodone for years and that team officials knew about it. The Angels responding this morning.
Reality star released. Joe Giudice out of ICE custody, transferred to Italy.
That's where my mother was pregnant with me.
Now fighting his deportation order. Will he ever return to the U.S.?
And the edge of glory. Simone Biles ready to vault into history. Tying a record overnight, just one win away from flooring the competition. Will it happen today?
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, everybody. A lot of news to get to on this Sunday, including a new wrinkle in the impeachment saga. But we start with a developing story out of New Orleans.
Yeah, the video is harrowing. Look at this. Hotel under construction collapsing. Bystanders, of course, terrified. This morning, the investigation into what went wrong here and the frantic rescue efforts ongoing.
Urban search and rescue teams worked through the night in hopes of finding 2 missing people. ABC's Marcus Moore is in New Orleans this morning with more. Good morning, Marcus.
Oh, good morning. It is the start of another difficult day here. We're just outside the partially collapsed building that sits right along the famous Canal Street. And this has been the scene of a desperate and delicate rescue operation. One worker is still missing.
Oh my God.
This morning, officials are investigating what caused this building and crane to topple over at the new Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans, killing 2 people.
Reported to be a building collapse at the Hard Rock Cafe.
The incident right here looks like the top floor taken down.
This horrifying video shows people running for their lives.
Look at those guys running.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God.
Steel and concrete falling from the sky all around them Saturday morning.
That right there was scary. My heart jumped out of me.
A choking cloud of dust and debris consuming the air around the survivors. People on this trolley narrowly escaping.
Get to the back.
Get to the back.
Nearly 24 people hurt, many contractors, and at least 1 construction worker is still missing.
I thought maybe they forgot to put a chute, you know? And I kept looking at it and it kept getting worse.
Officials have evacuated some of the neighboring buildings because they're concerned that the hotel itself could completely collapse or that the other cranes that are still standing, that they could fall over as well.
I'm so grateful because we don't know when we can go back to you.
It is still a very dangerous situation. The crane is still in place, but it is unsupported.
And you can see Canal Street just behind me. It is still closed down. And this morning, there is still the concern that the hotel itself, it could collapse, but they're really concerned about the remaining cranes. They feel that they could fall over, and that is a real concern going throughout the day. Still, with this morning, we don't know what caused that initial collapse.
A lot of work to be done on the scene there. Marcus Moore for us. Thank you. We are turning to politics now, and President Trump battling Democrats on their impeachment investigation. And we're learning what the U.S. ambassador to the European Union reportedly plans to tell Congress as it looks into whether Ukraine was pressured to investigate Joe Biden and his son. ABC's David Wright is at the White House for us this morning. David.
Good morning, Whit. The U.S. ambassador to the EU is reportedly ready to testify that the language of a text message that seemed to exonerate President Trump was actually relayed to him by the president. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to push back hard. President Trump told evangelical Christians at the Values Voters Summit he has nothing to fear from the Democrats.
Impeachment. I never thought I'd see or hear that word with regard to me.
But the Washington Post reports that Trump's former ambassador to the EU plans to testify this week he did not write a text message that seemed to exonerate Trump. In a September 9th exchange now central to the impeachment inquiry, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine appeared to question the administration's effort to convince Ukraine's president to investigate Trump's political rival, Joe Biden, allegedly by withholding $400 million in U.S. military aid for leverage. The diplomat William Taylor texted, "I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." 4 hours later, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, texted back, "The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind." Sondland then went on to suggest that they'd take the conversation offline. The president continues to insist there was no quid pro quo.
The whistleblower said quid pro quo 8 times. It was a little off, no times.
But according to the Washington Post, Sondland is prepared to tell Congress he has no idea if that's true, but that the language was relayed to him directly in a phone call with Trump himself. Sondland is also reportedly ready to tell investigators that for months he worked at the direction of the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. On Saturday, Trump defended Giuliani.
He's a man that looks for corruption, and whatever he does, I really believe he's I know he's an honorable man.
Although Giuliani does appear to be in the crosshairs of the investigation, President Trump continues to signal his support. According to the New York Times, the two had lunch yesterday at the president's golf club in Sterling, Virginia, and the president tweeted his praise, calling Giuliani the greatest mayor in the history of New York City. Dan?
Standing by Giuliani, at least thus far. David Wright at the White House, thank you very much. A lot to talk about here, obviously. So let's bring in ABC's Jonathan Karl, our chief White House correspondent, who's going to be anchoring This Week later this morning. John, good morning. Let's start with this reported testimony upcoming from Ambassador Sondland. While obviously it could be problematic for the president, it doesn't actually prove that there was a quid pro quo. In other words, it doesn't prove that the United States or the president withheld military aid unless the Ukrainians investigated Biden. So how damaging is it really?
Well, first of all, Ambassador Sondland's words in those text messages you heard David talking about have been cited over and over again by Republicans. That Sondland said in that text message, the president has been perfectly clear there was no quid pro quo. But now, with this report from the Washington Post, if he is going to say that was what the president told him, but he doesn't know if it was true, it certainly hurts one key Republican talking point. And the bigger picture here, Dan, is he is a witness who is coming to testify, the second witness in a week who has come to talk to congressional investigators in defiance of the White House, in defiance of the administration, which has said they don't want anybody testifying.
That is a big, no question about it. Let me just switch gears for a minute here and turn to the Democratic race for president, which, of course, is overshadowed by this impeachment inquiry. We're now 2 days away from the next debate, and you got a chance to sit down with Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who recently had a heart attack. Let's take a listen to your interview.
So let me ask you, you and Elizabeth Warren have pretty close to identical positions on the big issues. What do you say to those who say that they would pick her because she's 8 years younger than you, she didn't just come through this, didn't just have a heart attack, and look, in the positions, you're pretty much the same?
Well, look, every American is going to make his or her own choice about the candidate that they want, and Elizabeth Warren has been a friend of mine for some 25 years, and I think she is a very, very good senator. But there are differences between Elizabeth and myself. Elizabeth, I think, as you know, has said that she is a capitalist through her bones. I'm not. I am, I believe, the only candidate who's going to say to the ruling class of this country, the corporate elite, enough with your greed and with your corruption. We need real change in this country.
So Bernie sort of gingerly differentiating himself from Warren there. But I guess the real question is, how damaging is this heart attack to his candidacy?
Well, I think that is the question I asked him is a question a lot of voters are asking. But I have to say, Dan, he looked
Amazingly great. I mean, I actually went out in the backyard with him and played some baseball. There you see him getting a couple hits off me. You know, he's going to be out on the trail. We'll see how he looks in the debate on Tuesday. But clearly health will be an issue for him, and he's going to have to, you know, show that he can still pull it off. But I was surprised seeing a guy that just had a heart attack looking as good as he looked out there.
Indeed, and your underhand pitching game is tight. John Carl.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Thanks, John. We really appreciate it. I want to remind everybody, John has a lot more coming up later this morning right here on ABC on This Week. He'll have his complete interview with Senator Bernie Sanders. Plus, he's going to go one-on-one with the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin on the administration's response to the Turkish military action against the Kurds in Syria, a big story which happens to be our next story right here on GMA.
That's right, Dan. The latest development there, Turkey now says it has captured a key Syrian border town, and video has emerged reportedly showing disturbing images of Kurdish prisoners being publicly executed. ABC's Ian Pannell is reporting for us from the Syrian-Turkish border.
Yeah, good morning, Eva. I want everyone to just look at the scene behind me, because these are just some of the 11,000 young men and women killed by ISIS. They were our allies. They fought and died protecting their homeland, but also our homeland. And now some of the worst fears of what would happen after US troops pulled out and Turkish forces started bombing are coming to pass. Breaking news for you this morning. We've just learned that 250 ISIS brides, 700 people in total, have escaped from a nearby refugee camp, prompting fears that ISIS is making a comeback. This morning, Turkey's brutal assault on US-backed Kurdish troops and civilians enters a new and bloody phase. Now in its 5th day as Turkey and the militias it backs continue their relentless push into Syria. This video, obtained by the New York Times, appears to show Kurdish prisoners lying on the ground moments before they're executed. And this video, tweeted by the same Turkish-backed Islamist militants, appears to show more captured Kurdish fighters, the conflict taking a radical sectarian turn. This Syrian hospital overflowing with burned and broken bodies. Tearful mourners paying respects to the lives lost, burying the victims as the Turkish offensive intensifies and the body count grows reportedly into the hundreds. Thousands of people have come out onto the streets to commemorate the people they see as martyrs. These are young YPG fighters killed defending their homeland from Turkey. The Kurdish-led Syrian Defense Forces desperately calling on its American allies to close northern Syrian airspace to Turkish warplanes. President Trump on Saturday releasing $50 million in aid to protect persecuted ethnic and religious minorities. But it's not this kind of aid they need. The SDF confirming to ABC News its commander has now told the US that if it won't stop the Turkish attack, the SDF will turn to Russia for help. Whit, I can tell you there are even more of those gruesome videos online, including the roadside assassination of a leading female Kurdish politician who was completely unarmed. The groups carrying this out work with Turkey, and they're now accused of prompting sectarian violence here, raising fears that what we're witnessing is de facto ethnic cleansing in northern Syria. Whit?
Disturbing developments on the ground there. Ian Pannell for us. Thank you. This morning, the wife of an American diplomat behind the wheel during a fatal car crash in the UK is expressing her regret over the accident. ABC's Julia McFarland joins us from our London bureau as the teen's family is now traveling to the U.S. Julia, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. Yes, that's right. 19-year-old Harry Dunn was killed in a car crash in late August, but the woman behind the wheel has stayed silent until now. A statement from her attorney reads, Anne is devastated by this tragic accident. No loss compares to the death of a child, and Anne extends her deepest sympathy to Harry Dunn's family. The media reporting has been inaccurate in many respects. Anne fully cooperated with the police and the investigation. Well, today, Harry Dunn's family responded to that, saying, sorry just doesn't cut it. Anne Sakoulas, the wife of an American diplomat, collided with Harry Dunn, who was on a motorbike. She was driving on the wrong side of the road. After speaking with police, Sakoulas left for the US on diplomatic immunity. Dunn's family say they're open to meeting Sakoulas after she said she was open to it. The family are heading to the US this week, saying they hope they will get the answers that they are seeking. Dan?
Horrifying story. Julia, thank you so much. We're going to turn now to a shooting at a wedding in New Hampshire and the heroes who jumped in to save lives. Here's ABC's Zachary Quiche.
This morning, a New Hampshire church community is reeling after a gunman walked in during a wedding and opened fire, injuring 3, including the bishop and the bride.
The 911 call was made from inside the church at where a wedding service was taking place.
The gunman shooting 75-year-old Bishop Stanley Coate in the upper chest and the bride, 60-year-old Claire McMullen, in the arm.
After the shooting began, parishioners immediately acted.
Wedding guests are being applauded for their heroism after they tackled the shooter and subdued him until officers arrived. Overnight, the family of the deacon credited with initiating the tackle, speaking out, telling our affiliate WMUR he took a leap of faith, jumping from a balcony to stop the gunman.
Everybody started to run when they heard the shots. He said, I need to get out of here, but then he stopped and said, no, I can't leave. And he went back and tackled the guy.
The incident occurred Saturday morning at the New England Pentecostal Ministries. Additionally, a funeral service was scheduled after the wedding at the same house of worship for another longtime bishop that was shot and killed earlier this month. Authorities now looking into a connection between the two cases.
This incident does not appear to be a random event.
Guests for the funeral services were shocked by the scene.
It's just surreal. Lewis was shot, and now there's a shooting at his church.
Police have identified and taken into custody 37-year-old Dale Holloway as the alleged gunman.
Now, Holloway is being held on a charge of purposely and knowingly causing bodily injury by means of a deadly weapon. He will be arraigned on Tuesday. Wild situation up there in New Hampshire.
Wild indeed. Thank you, Zachary. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Well, a new death being blamed on California's destructive wildfires as smoke blankets parts of Los Angeles this morning. The fires forced thousands from their homes. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez joins us from LA. Good morning, Marcy.
Eva, good morning. Firefighters are still out here keeping a close eye on these destroyed homes. You can see the walls of this one are barely standing, yet incredibly, the vehicle in the driveway is still intact. We're told these flames moved in so quickly. The couple next door says they had just minutes to grab their 2 kids and a few belongings and get out.
Newly released video shows the ferocity of one of the fires that ravaged Southern California. In Los Angeles County, nearly 8,000 acres burned this morning. Firefighters still putting out hot spots, trying to avoid a flare-up and the kind of nightmare Monica and Drew Silver walked out of their house to find Thursday night. Wind whipping burning embers, flames closing in on them from 3 sides.
We looked at each other and we just knew we weren't going to come home to a house. All the embers were flying horizontally across the walkway and the driveway. And the kids went, oh, well, we're not going out there. I said, well, if we don't, we die.
They returned this weekend with an insurance adjuster confirming their fears.
It was hard, to hear somebody say it's a total loss, like no question about it.
Theirs is one of dozens of homes destroyed this week as several fires burned out of control. In Riverside County, police confirming a second person was killed in this mobile home community that was quickly overcome by flames. And this morning in Los Angeles County, mandatory evacuation orders are lifted. Residents now returning home.
We're very lucky. We're very, very fortunate.
While the Silvers assess their losses. Their wedding rings gone, everything from their photography business destroyed.
Lost our home and our work.
And yet they say they're grateful.
The things don't matter. It's being together and being here and living through it. And we have our lives, we have our health, and that's all that matters.
And their neighbors are thankful, too, because other than these 2 homes, firefighters were able to save every other house in this community. Whit.
And that is some positive news and what is a very difficult situation there. Marcy Gonzalez for us, thank you. We want to transition to the weather now. Rob Marciano back in studio, and a tale of different stories depending on where you are in the country. We got fires and we have snow in some places.
Yeah, well, one connected with the other, that cold air kind of causing the Santa Ana winds. Conditions there improving. Obviously, we're still in the middle of fire season, so we could have more of that to come. But we do have something positive to talk about as far as the season changing. There you go. Keystone open 20th for 20 years now. This is the earliest it's ever been open, thanks in part to that cold air. They've been able to make snow. They got a little bit of fresh snow as well, and today they've got the bluebird skies going. Here's that snowstorm that dumped nearly 30 inches of snow in Harvey, North Dakota. It's been slow to move out. It's still across parts of the arrowhead of of Minnesota. And we're looking at freeze warnings this morning from State College, which is where game day will be, I think, next weekend, all the way to Memphis. So a chilly, very fall-like start to your day across much of the Midwest. That's checking what's happening weather-wise across the nation. Time now for a look at your local forecast.
Good morning. I'm Stormwatch.